Well, I think I've figured out how I'm going to do my wiring, and I've spent way too many hours thinking about this and drawing up some different diagrams and getting ideas. Basically, I want to modernize the electrical system. I don't want a big bulkhead connector coming through the firewall and you see all the mass of wires coming out the back of it. I want all that hidden. I really don't want any of the fuses up under the dash to where you're crawling around trying to find them. And I thought about using a couple of different Ron Francis kits. One of them, I think it's called the 24 Access 24/7 or 24/7 Access. It's got some magnetic mounts. The box it's in has a metal back, and so you can stick it somewhere on a, on some magnets to anything metal, and then you can just pull it out and you leave a little pigtail, you pull it out and you can look at the fuses and you can stick it back. And that's probably best choice for what I really want to do. However, it's, about $600. I have a lot of wiring components, and I really had just planned on building my own wiring harness. So I'm kind of back to that's my plan. I've got this Bussmann fuse panel, and it uses the mini fuses and some micro relays. It does need to be have a hole cut out in the panel that just slightly smaller than this, so that it can recess in and the wires come out the back. So I'm thinking it's going to go right up here, and then that'll give me 10 fuses and up to 5 relays, and I think I've got it figured out where I can do it with 4 relays, and then that I can use one of the relay spots for 2 additional fuses. So that'll get me 12 fuses, which is, I need 11 for sure. Kind of would prefer to have 12. And then I need 4 relays for the way I want to wire it. And then I really want to put relays on the headlights, but I think I'm going to mount those up in the front where the headlight would be, so that I've got a shorter, rather than mounting through a micro relay and running heavy wire from one to another, I can just run the relay up here and real short run to the headlight, and I can come straight off the battery, which is on this corner. So one over here, put a circuit breaker in there, and then the headlights have a high power source, or a large power source. Then additionally, I have this fuse block, which gets me 6 large fuses, and rather than run one giant fuse for the whole system, I was thinking I would run this, and I could fuse off some of my high power components like the power seats, also the key switch, so that you have 2 of them one would be power to the key switch for anytime the key is on, and then another one would be power to the fuse block to the smaller fuse block for the main power source, so that you have a master fuse for the whole system, and then so that if you have something go to short between the battery and this, you've got it fused. So kind of like the way they used to use fusible links, we could just have some different fuses that cover components. It fits pretty well right here. Probably have to build like a little bit of a shelf just to make it fit well, or mount tight. Then this piece could go up here, and there is about a 1.5 inch gap between the 2 panels, and it's completely, I'm not going to say sealed, but there's no access to it from underneath. The only access is down on that end. So I could run all my wires in back on that end of the firewall, and on the driver's side I can do the same thing in that fender well, and I can run in a few wires for like the temperature sensors and the oil pressure sensor, just a few odds and ends items over on this side, as well as, because the headlight switch is over there, I could run straight up to the first headlight and up to the marker lights, and then do a crossover. So I keep down the number of wires making transitions all around the truck. I'm thinking that's going to be my plan, is to have 2 outlets for the wires, one on each side, completely hidden inside the wheel wells, and then have the fuse panel mounted up here. And won't be the easiest one to see because it's a forward opening hood, so you're going to kind of be looking over upside down on it. But there's as small or as big a truck, but as small as it really is, there's just not a lot of room that has a dead space behind it to where I could run all the wires in here. I do need to figure out how I'm going to do it so that this panel could be taken back off at some point if need be, and be able to unhook the wires back behind the firewall. So I may just do some kind of cannon plug over there. I'm not really sure yet. So I think for now I'm going to start chasing down that plan, find some grommets, the right size hole saws, take this back off. I just have a few bolts holding it in place so I can figure out where everything is in relation to the firewall. Take a few measurements so I can get all my wires the right length, or we want them a little long. I think when we get a little closer to the final assembly, I'll come back in and paint the inside of that bare metal just so I don't have a place for it to start rusting. But there we have it. A place to run the wires through. I was thinking I would use this bulkhead connector as a ground port, but it's really just very big. So I think I'm just going to do a ground port, but I'm just going to take a piece of all thread, put a nut on both sides, run it through there and tighten it up, and that'll give me a place to tie a ground in, and then on the inside as well. Because I've rhino lined everything, it's going to be harder to get a good ground, so I may as well just run me a contact, and then that can go straight to the battery just right here at the front corner. So I'm going to put this away and find an all thread that we can drill through there. And the idea here is I cut off about 2 inches of 3/8 coarse thread stud. We're going to put a washer and a nut on one end. Alright, so then the idea behind this is you could take, preferably use black, but you could take a battery cable and take that nut off, put that on there, tighten it back down, and now you have a good solid ground. Not only in the body because you got it in the metal, but also on the inside because there's another nut in there where you can put wires on it and then just transfer that ground. Typically you see this kind of thing done on a fiberglass body or something like that, but works good when you've coated a whole thing, the whole body, and trying to get to a good solid ground in there would be somewhat difficult. Gives you a good alternative and a good source for branching out for a ground source. So anyway, that's done. We got that. We can start pulling a few wires, and then so I'm going to use some of these Delphi GT connectors and put them. And I'll leave a little bit of slack so that you can push it in and out, and more importantly, slack on the inside of this inner fender so that you could take it off part way and then unplug this and get to the ground nut and pull it all apart. And that'll be my method for connecting the inside to the outside while leaving it all hidden. On the passenger side, I need 2 of them, one 14 pin and one 16 pin. A lot more wires going through on that side. But that's just because of how I'm routing the wires. You could do it all on one side, or you could wire it to where your fuse block and a lot of other stuff was on the inside of the cab, and that would reduce the number of wires coming out. But this is how I'm going to do it. So with that all started, we may end up adding a second grommet on the passenger side, but we'll see based on how many wires are coming out of there.
Hey guys, well, it's been a while since that video was taken. As you can tell, I got a lot more gray. And in fact, the video that you've already seen was filmed in September of 2022. Is filmed the right word if you're doing digital video? Whatever. September of 2022, which is 3.5 years ago. And not a lot of work happened for a long time after that. We got really busy in the shop, as you'll remember, maybe if you're not new to the channel, but we had the 57 Chevy that we worked on. We had the 55 pickup that we worked on that had the big blown motor in it. Of course, both of those one of them got body work. The 57 Chevy got a lot of metal work, not body work, but metal work. And then the pickup got wiring, and then in the meantime we did the Dodge Dakota. We kind of rehabbed our daily driver, the Honda Pilot, Anyway, a lot of work went on. And with that, the Scout just sat. It did get moved out of the shop there, the one you saw in 22, that was in New Mexico. And it got moved from there into a garage bay on my house, you know, about 200 feet away. And it sat there for a long time. And I would just kind of pick at it, trying to do a little something. And over the time, I did get some schematics drawn up and some work done. And then we came back from a trip in September of 2025 and got an offer on our house not long after that. And then it was, oh crap, we have to move. And so then the process became, how do I put everything that I have, finish cars, do whatever I've got to do to get things done, gone, and out of the way. And part of that was putting the Scout together so that it could go in a trailer without destroying panels and everything. So a lot of wiring got done to force that to happen. And I didn't get any video of it. It was just not a possibility. And so that was basically October to March, October of 2025 through, or excuse me, October of 2024 through March of 2025. And then it had to be in a trailer and it had to be headed for Washington, where it got put into the bay. And you've seen it in the background on several videos, but it got put into the bay of the small shop, what I'm calling the small shop. It's the RV garage, whatever. And that is where it has sat. And I have made efforts to go out there and work on it. And the last time I did, which you'll see some video coming up, I kind of recover the plan because it'd been years. So I'm trying to refresh my own memory. So like I said, I started to work on the truck again in November of 25. You're going to see that video. Immediately after this clip, you're going to see a whole bunch of diagrams, schematics for the International Scout. These are the stock ones that I could find online. Some of you may recall I did a video on how to modernize your windshield wiper motor, and that worked really well. A few people have contacted me that have done it. Some have had a few problems, and what we're finding is International, from year to year, changed weird things on the Scout. So probably all the traveler laws and everything, but it's kind of interesting. We're seeing this different things were done, and I don't know if it was to make things better, if somebody else was making a part for them and it just changed or what. But anyway, the diagrams are there. You'll just have to pause the video, snap a picture if you need them. They're going to be up for 3 seconds each, so that'll be, I don't know, less than a minute, and you'll have all of those. And that's pretty much all the ones I could find online anywhere. These used to be on my website. I closed my website down 6 months ago or something because it just wasn't getting any traffic, and so didn't see any reason to keep paying $400 or $500 a year to host a website that wasn't getting used. If we get back into building hot rods and doing it, you know, for somebody else rather than just doing my own projects, might reopen the website. But for now, that's the way it is. If you contact me directly with an email, I'd be glad to email you these, just if you need them in a little better format or whatever than taking a picture. Otherwise, that's what you're going to see next. And then we'll get onto the video that I shot back in November of last year. And then hopefully coming up soon, I will be actually schematics for the new design in hand and working again on the Scout. So thank you all for following along. This has been a huge project, very long, should not have taken anywhere near this long, but it has. So thanks again. We'll continue.
All right, welcome back. Today I wanted to start by talking about the Scout, where it's at and where it needs to go. Right now, where it's at is it has sat in the same spot maybe rolled forward and backwards 2 feet about 20 times for about 7 months. So it's time to actually finish this truck. I'm not going to get it all done in this video, probably not going to get it all done in this year, but we're mid-November. I wanted to drive it last July. That didn't even touch it. Haven't touched this truck since other than moving it back and forth in this bay, haven't touched it since probably February or March of 2025. So it's been 10 months. I do have some video of some of that I did. I have a few pictures, but I basically was like, I have to get this thing in one piece so that I can get it on a trailer and get it to this garage. And it sat here just like this with the steering column and the glove box and the steering wheel laying on the hood on this blanket all this time. What I did get done was some of the electrical. See it sticking out in places. Really, all of the electrical is in place. The main harness is in the truck, and I'm going to kind of walk you through that. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time discussing what I've done and what I need to do to finish that. In addition to the electrical, I need to finish the plumbing, and that means brake lines, fuel lines. I need to get the air conditioner installed, but that's kind of been figured out. It's just time to finish, and I really want to get that done. This is going to be the first project that we finish, whether it's in this shop or the other building as that gets done. This is going to be the first one we finish. And then hopefully that will get us onto a good path to start finishing all of the projects I've started and get some new ones in the shop so that you guys have some really cool content to enjoy. For now though, let's take a little walk around and see what I've done and what we still have to get finished to get this truck where we want it to be, which is a driving vehicle ready for the road. As you can see, this thing has slowly become, like every other flat surface in my shop, a place for stuff to accumulate. I do have a lot of parts that I found in different boxes that are just laying here. Got is a lot of the wiring hanging out here. Pigtails. Pigtails and other stuff. And I try and keep everything labeled so that it makes it a little easier to track what needs to go where. A lot of times it's just essentially a code for me, which like in this case is DR14/G. So it's the driver's side, 14 pin connector, pin G. Over here, driver 14H, driver side 14H. So again, driver side 14 pin connector, and it's pin number or pin position H. So with that, you can kind of see how I try and keep track of that. And then I have drawings that show all of what those things are, what color the wire is, and then if you find we find a circuit that's complete, we can see inner fender connectors. This is a blue 9-wire bundle, goes front to rear, and it tells me what all those wires do and then maybe what connector they run into. So it's the method I use rather than trying to draw out a whole bunch of schematics. Probably not quite as good as a schematic, but definitely something I can do fairly easily. But let's finish taking a look around. So you can see we have another bundle of wires coming out of the passenger side under the dash. You can see it back there. At the back of the truck, we have fuel line that still needs to be figured out. We have, this actually is that blue wire I was just reading about. And it comes out over here, and I left enough to come to the other side. And there's a black one that has more wires in it. One of them, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but one of them has wires for the tail lights, brake lights, blinkers, all that. The other one is set up for trailer lights and I think the fuel pump. just because it's a little heavier gauge. But you can see all of that, and then the big cluster of wires down here underneath, different pieces that need to be polished up and done. Brake cylinder, master cylinder is still laying here, and I'm going to try and get this stuff off the hood so we can open the hood and take a look. All right, so I got the hood open. I'd forgotten I'd put a hood latch on here, and it was latched, and I don't have the cable hooked up, so I had to come in from the front of the grill over that rag there, all the way back with something long enough to push on that little lever and pop the hood. But it worked really well. It was obviously pretty well aligned because it clicked. Anyway, let's see. Also, you can see what we're working with right over there. The big box is going to be our main heavy fuses. Power seats, think heat and AC. We can check that in a minute. And then this box over here, this has all of our lower amp fuses, everything up to say 30 amps, and relays, and those would be for the different heavy load circuits. Some of those are like our fuel pump for our fuel injection and other pieces like that. And over here you can see our main lines coming in, and then each of these, this is the main bus here. So this brings power from the battery over to this, and then each of these goes out as a separate circuit to wherever we needed power, including, I think 2 of them go to this box to be the primary powers for the power for the battery buses in here. Then we have a main circuit breaker here that shuts off the whole truck. And you can see we have quite a few loose wires just laying around, and they're all tagged like coil minus. That's 8 AC compressors, so that's coming from the AC switch. Coil plus. So, and then the coil is supposed to get mounted, I believe, like right in here. So anyway, kind of see where we're at. I've run most of the wires. That's what's important as far as what we're getting. We've got some relays in here. You see they're numbered, and that's so that I can track them on my wiring harness. And we got some loose wires, horns, high beam. And then we'll have some turn signals and blinkers. We're going to be using just a small LED light for both the front and rear side markers. I have some lights, so we're changing these out. We're going to have some cool lights that'll fit in there, become our front blinker, as well as I think I set them up to be like a fog light. And so we still have some pieces to make. We have LED headlights for this. We have LED taillights. And then in the dash, we're going to be using the factory gauge cluster updated with LED lighting. I still have some gauges to clean up. You guys will have seen that I did a video a while back converting the amp meter to a voltage meter. And it's not really a conversion. You're just reusing the factory face and needle on a more modern or on a different type gauge, but found one that worked, and it seems to all work really well. So in the past, I tried to do a video on how to wire your vehicle. And the way I tend to start is I lay out all of the pieces and parts that I think I'm going to be installing, whether it's the headlights, the taillights, the heat and AC unit, coils, fuel injection. And I literally just try and lay them out on a floor in roughly the area they would be if the vehicle was two-dimensional, and kind of get an idea of what's there and what I need to look for. Like, do I have a blinker switch? Do I have a headlight switch? Do I have an ignition switch? Do I have lights for the interior? And trying to kind of figure all that out so that I get any components I'm missing ordered. Then I write all those things down in a list of roughly where they're going to be on the vehicle. So my list might be front vehicle, winch, headlights, turn signals, running lights, radiator fans, on and on and on. And I try and build it from the front to the back, trying to leave space for me to add components. And then once I have all my components listed, I try and keep that to a fairly narrow column, and then I make a list of what might be required to make that component work. So let's just say headlights. I need a headlight switch. Do I want a relay? I might want a relay to control, say, the high beams so that I'm not running all that power through a headlight switch. On the older vehicles, we ran the power through them all the time, but the component life was decreased because of that, because you're putting a high load through this switch. Well, if you can run one relay and take a lot of load off that switch, maybe you're going to do that, maybe you don't need to. If it's not a daily driver, you probably don't need to. If you're somebody like me who likes wiring and I'm going to overbuild my wiring harness the same way I try and overbuild everything, then yeah, you're going to have a relay in there, at least on the high beam. The other nice thing is you could have on that high beam, when you go to high beam, on the headlights, it could also turn off your fog lights, your driving lights or whatever. So doing one switch, you might get 2 or 3 functions. That's kind of cool. Once I have my list with all my components and any specific switches or things that I may need, then I take that list and begin trying to come up with a number of circuits I'm going to need, how big a circuits, how much power am I going to need, how big an alternator I might need, and that would all be based on your total amp draw for all these components that might be running at any given time. So if you're driving this thing at night, you're going to have headlights. You need to plan for the high beam side of the headlights. And if you're going to have any extra driving lights that aren't going to go turn off with your bright lights, the radiator fans, probably the radio, the heater, or air conditioner, in my case, fuel injection. I think I said radiator fans already. The fuel injection, the fuel pump. So you kind of take all those components that you might have running at any individual time, and whatever their total amp draw is, you've got to be able to replace those amps, plus enough to keep the battery charged on top of that. So those are things to consider. So typically on an older vehicle like this one, and if we were running this with a mechanical fuel pump and a carburetor and a mechanical radiator fan. So basically the only things that might be on would be the bright lights, and they were those old yellow incandescent that you could barely see anything with anyway, so they didn't draw a lot of amps. They drew a lot for their time, but they didn't draw a lot of amps compared to some of the bulbs we can use today. You might only need a 40 amp alternator if that's really all you've got running at a maximum time. You know, basically your heater, if it even had air conditioning, and the radio and the headlights. You might not need more than a 40 amp alternator and a good battery. Today, we run a lot of LED lighting, which decreases our normal average load. You can run some really bright LED headlights and other things, but some of those do have a pretty good draw load, amp load. But the electric fuel pumps and the electric fans and some other items may really put you up there in the amp load. Maybe you need 80 or 100 amps of alternator, 120. You got a lot of stereo. You might need multiple batteries and 200 amps of charging power. So keep all that stuff in mind. Really look at what you're using in your load and what you're trying to accomplish. And the primary thing here is you're trying to keep the battery charged even when you are drawing your maximum load. Don't be so overzealous in your calculations that you're just spinning giant alternators for no reason or carrying huge batteries, dual batteries for no reason. Try and do a little math on it. From that, I calculate my charging system. I can then figure out, okay, my battery is going to sit here. My main fuse block is going to be here. Am I going to have a master fuse, like I have that master circuit breaker? And you can use either one. With those, where are they going to be located, and how big a battery cable do I need to get my load from this battery to my fuse block, where I can then disperse that load into different pieces. Once you have that, you can figure out how many relays maybe you need, how are they going to be powered, are you, which you probably should be, fusing the relay as well as fusing the load on the relay. So that's something you got to consider. And all of those things are part of building a complete harness. If you're buying a harness from Ron Francis Wireworks, or you're buying a painless harness or an auto wire harness, they've done a lot of that thought process for you. And I'm not recommending that anybody wants to get out there and figure out how to build your own harness. I wanted to do it, one, because I've never done an entire harness from scratch. So I wanted to do that for this vehicle, just for the challenge, just to see where the problems are. And I found things that were like, okay, I need to get a lot of wire into this one little location, and that's difficult. So how do you branch that out to either not have it go to one location, or how do you gather all those wires to one location so you can get them plugged into a battery or a fuse or whatever? Keeping in mind, this is the hardest way to probably do it, where I built everything. I decided where all my blinker, I decided where everything was going to be, whether it was the blinker flasher, the emergency light flasher, or how I was going to get power to the radio. If you buy a pre-made harness, it gets a lot easier because somebody's done a lot of the pre-planning for you in the circuit design. You just got to get wires to where they terminate and hook up your components. But you still need to know, like, I have 27 components. How many of those circuits how many of them need to be on a separate circuit? Do you have power windows, power locks, power seats? If you have all that stuff, you need to plan for all of those circuits, and you probably don't want your power locks and your power windows on the same circuit. Not that you can't, but you got to be careful, because if somebody's holding the power window button down and you hit the lock button, did you just overload that circuit and now you have neither? The other side of that is, if your fuel pump is on the same circuit as your radiator fans, you're drawing a lot of power on that one circuit, and there's a very good chance that under high load on the fans and the fuel pump, you're going to blow a circuit. So again, that's two circuits, not one. Power windows, power locks, probably two circuits. Radio, it could be on the same circuit as your amplifier, unless you're a massive system, in which case, two more circuits. How about your dome lights? Your dome lights can be on the same circuit as your headlights. Pretty much no problem, especially if you're running LED lights in your domes. They draw hardly any amps. But your brakes need to be on a separate circuit. So you need to plan for that. Like, if you're running a race car, you might need 6 circuits, 8 circuits. If you're running a street car with every possible component, you might need 24 or more circuits. So that's why I'm saying a little pre-planning will help you purchase the right product for you. And I'm not plugging any products other than I always plug Ron Francis Wiring, just because I think they provide a very, very sturdy, durable, modifiable platform for most of us. And not for everybody. They don't try to be for everybody, but I think they have the majority of us covered in their products. So that's my plug for Ron Francis Wiring. But you guys pick what works for you, and try and use what I'm going to talk about here today and in this next few videos. Try and use that information for getting you a good quality finished product, no matter how you started. Starting from scratch, building your very own harness, fuse block and everything else, or starting with an auto wire race kit that has 8 circuits in it. It's all the planning. The pre-planning is what wins. So I think we start this process by getting all these papers unburied and getting them laid out and starting to figure out where we were 7, 8 months ago, maybe 10 months ago, and what we need to do next for the rest of the electrical. And I'm going to finish the electrical before I do the plumbing, unless I find something where, like, the plumbing has to be here for me to figure out where a switch or some other component needs to be. So that's it for today. We're going to hit this truck pretty hard in the next month or 2, 3, whatever it takes to get the electrical finished up, and then we're going to kind of go over the plumbing the same way we've gone over the electrical and finish that up. And we're just going to how to eat an elephant kind of thing, one piece at a time. Let's get this truck done and get it on the road. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all the other YouTube stuff. God bless you. We'll see you real soon on the next video. Have a great day.